Hey, it's me, JoJo from Jerz, and shocker, I have something to say. Today is the March for Our Life rally in DC, which is wildly ironic if you think about it, because Republicans don't give a damn about life. They want control. That's all they want, control over our bodies. They want to decide when we can have birth or not have birth, live or die. And speaking about the word life, Republicans are trying to find a new term for pro-life because it's hurting them electorally. But here's the thing. They've never been pro-life. Forcing a 10-year-old to carry her rapist fetus to term isn't pro-life. Threatening to imprison a woman for having an abortion isn't pro-life. Forcing seniors to pay more for their prescriptions, denying gender-affirming care, lying about masks and vaccine safety, cutting healthcare access for our veterans, rolling back child labor laws, denying starving children free meals at school, making guns easier to get, and offering thoughts and prayers only in the wake of yet another mass shooting isn't pro-life. It doesn't matter how they brand themselves. It's not about a word. It's about their actions, about their platforms and policies. They care about forcing birth, restricting rights, and limiting personal freedom. They care, like I said, about control. And that is anything but pro-life. But since we're still calling them pro-life Republicans are okay with a woman dying from sepsis in her car in a hospital parking lot before they'll let her have an abortion. Back the blue Republicans are okay with our Capitol Police being beaten, bear sprayed, and tased. Support the troops Republicans are okay letting a single senator imperil our national security because he was real upset by the idea of women having the right to bodily autonomy. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And this is all they keep showing us. Like I said, they'll let a woman die before letting her have an abortion. They'll teach third graders how to tourniquet before banning AR-15s, and they'll let 8 million kids go hungry instead of giving them free food. But today, they're marching to show the world just how pro-life they are. I am so excited for my guest this week because I got to talk to the one and only Tom Colicchio. I'm sure you know him as host of Top Chef, but he's also obviously a world famous chef and restaurateur. More than that, he's an activist, an advocate, and a personal inspiration. He is the chef and owner of Crafted Hospitality, which includes New York's Craft and Temple Court, Craft Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Heritage Steak and Craft Steak, and Small Batch in Garden City, New York. He's a vocal and outspoken social justice advocate. He executive produced the 2013 documentary, A Place at the Table, about the underlying causes of hunger in the U.S. This eye-opening experience led Tom on a journey to Washington, D.C., where he's been a mainstay in our nation's capital in the years since. From holding members of Congress accountable on their voting records around food, to working with former First Lady Michelle Obama on the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, Tom has established himself as the leading citizen chef advocating for a food system that values access, affordability, and nutrition over corporate interests. We talked at great length about this, about the idea of hunger. Yes, I would love to talk to Tom Colicchio about food all day long, every day of the week, and twice on Sunday. But the reality is we live in a world right now where there are upwards of 13 million children who face food insecurity right this moment. 1 in every 5 kids in this country is unsure where their next meal is going to come from. And when you know those numbers and then you hear that 15 Republican-led states have said, no thanks, to food assistance from the federal government so that those kids can get free lunches in the summer months when they're not in school, it blows your mind. And you have to talk about it because they have to have their feet held to the fire over this. Those 15 Republican governors are leaving 8 million children hungry when they don't have to, when the administrative costs of implementing this policy would be nothing. But they're still going to let them go hungry. And Tom and I talk about why we think that is. I have lots of reasons that, the way I think. I do think that there's a more like specific plan. I don't think it's just that they're evil and heartless and cruel, although they are those things, and it's entirely possible that it's just those things. But I still see all of this as part of a bigger strategy, and not a good one. So Tom and I have this conversation, and we talk about food too, don't get me wrong. Of course, we talked about food. But this one is really important to me. It's very, very, very important, clearly, to Tom. And I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to have it with him and to share it with all of you. So with that said, enjoy. Welcome to the Are You Effing Kidding Me podcast, Tom Colicchio.
Thanks for having me. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm trying not to fangirl because I'm a long time fan of yours. So if I don't have like the super cool setting up front, I'm gonna mellow into it, I promise.
It's just fine. I'm a fan of your social media feeds. I've been a follower for a while.
Wow. That is definitely flattering, and you're pretty active on there, which I think is incredible. I'm obviously Jersey girl, and you are also very proud to be from New Jersey, right?
I am, yeah.
So
you're probably from a better place than I was in New Jersey.
I don't know. I'm from originally Morris County, from Whippany, and then my dad remarried and moved us to what I consider like Mars, which is Sussex County.
Oh, sure, that is Morris. Yeah, where in Sussex?
I grew up in Lafayette.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to spend a lot of time up there, fishing in Stokes State Forest.
Oh yeah, Stokes is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a totally different part of New Jersey from where you're from. When you're from Elizabeth, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm from Elizabeth. Yeah, we're from Union County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A friend of mine grew up in Elizabeth, so I asked him for some Elizabeth like things to ask you about. He asked the number one thing he asked me: did you know that Santillo's caught fire?
Of course I do. So Santillo's, they were friends growing up. My first serious girlfriend lived next door to the pizzeria, so we used to spend time there. And one of the Santillos was maybe I think a year older than I was, and had a tragic accident. He jumped into a pool and became broke his neck, and he was a quadriplegic. He died a little while ago. So yeah, I know the family pretty well. In fact, my father's sister, so my Aunt Teresa, married a Santillo.
Oh,
no, I know them. I know them pretty well. Yeah, it's really, really horrible. Yeah, but he'll build back. He'll build back. Yeah, and it was a great. I mean, it was always like growing up, we would get pizza there, and they would do Sicilian pizza. So it was like this pizza, and it was fantastic, and loved it. But that was our pizza. We didn't know any. It was, if it was good, it was bad. That was our pizza. Right. And to see what has become of that, it's like a serious, contender for one of the best pizzerias in the country.
Yeah, you see that a lot. And I think that's incredible because I'm also very partial to New Jersey pizza. But if you gave me an Asbury Park Boardwalk, like tomato pie from the pinball place, I would probably be happy, though. I think that's one of the more delicious bites of food in the state.
Yeah.
But I do.
So is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Well, sorry, what's pork roll? I don't know what that is. It's Taylor ham. It's
Taylor ham. Yes, of course it's Taylor ham.
I never pork roll. It's like the divide, right? Everybody's like it's north versus south. Yeah.
Yes, it's Taylor ham. Well, growing up, it was always Taylor ham.
Taylor ham, and to this day, whenever I hear someone say pork roll, I'm like, "Where are you from?" And then they're like, "Well, the brand name is Taylor ham. It's not what it is. It's pork roll." And I was like, "Yeah. Do you ask for an adhesive bandage when you need a Band-Aid, or do you ask for a Band-Aid?"
Right. It's for Band-Aid, exactly. Yeah.
So he also said Spirito's giant ravioli, Tommy's hot dog, and some old school market where you can pick your own poultry while it's still alive.
Okay, the old school market I worked in.
Okay, he did.
My uncle, the guy who ended up marrying one of my aunts, he had a stand there. So when I was 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there, I would go there Saturday mornings and work and sell vegetables in the market. Yeah. So I know that. Spirito's. So I knew the Spirito family because I lived in the home that they owned. So I grew up in a property they owned. But so my father used to take us to Spirito's on Friday, especially in the summer. He used to play softball at O'Brien Field. O'Brien Field was right down the street from Spiritos. So my mother would get that night off from cooking, and we would go in. Now there were two parts of Spiritos. We would go to the bar, and that's all I knew when I was a kid. And there were some booths, and there was a bar, and we would either get sometimes we got pizza, but mostly it was the ravioli, the square ravioli. We'd get veal cutlet and ravioli, not veal cutlet parmesan, just fried veal cutlet, ravioli with sauce on it. And it was I was in high school. I think I was a freshman, and there was after a basketball game. Everybody's like, "We're going to Spiritos." I was like, "Okay." So we're going to Spiritos, and they're walking in the side door. I'm like, "Where are you guys going?" Spiros. I'm like, "No, Spiritos is around the corner." Like, where are you going? I had no idea there was a full dining room back there.
Oh my God.
Separate dining room. I only ate at the bar, and unfortunately that closed about 3 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, there was a group trying to buy it, and they want to know if I'd run it, and I was like, "No, it's okay."
No, thanks. And was it a casualty of COVID or?
No. The place was about 100 years old. It was run by three brothers, and they all passed away. And I think one of the relatives was running it, and kind of, also it was a tough spot. The neighborhood changed quite a bit. It was in what was in Peterstown, which was an Italian neighborhood, and it changed a lot over the years. But the bigger problem was it was in a neighborhood, you couldn't park anywhere. You'd have to, you drive around for half an hour trying to find a place to park.
Yeah. My mom's favorite Italian restaurant, she grew up in Red Bank, was in like in a neighborhood too. And you couldn't, it was like you drive around for hours just to find a place to park. I was like, really? Do we have to go here? There's plenty of places downtown. She's like, no, this is the place you have to go. But
And my brother just moved down to that neck. He's in Brielle. It's near Red Bank, and all these restaurants he's going to now that he claims are the greatest things in the world. But
yeah. Give me the clam hut from the days gone by, the old clam hut, not the new clam hut where it's not even like clams. It's like some fancy Italian. Give me a bucket of clams with broth on the side, some coleslaw, some biscuits. I'm happy. But that doesn't exist. They've ruined whatever. That was the great thing. But you mentioned your dad bringing you to that bar, the bar side. And one of the things I've heard you talk about is your dad's garden and growing up.
Oh, my grandfather.
Your grandfather's garden. Okay, so that was your grandfather's garden. Was that also in Elizabeth? Was it somewhere else?
Yeah, so we didn't, we lived on, there were 4 families. My grandparents lived in the one toward the back, and we were up in the front. But there was no place to garden. So my grandfather, he built like a trellis and would garden in 5-gallon buckets.
Oh, wow.
So tomato plants in the buckets and zucchini plants and peppers, and it would all grow. And so that's how he gardened. But I garden. I have a much more elaborate garden. I have a house out in Long Island, so we have a pretty good garden. There's about 20 raised beds. But I got that all from my grandfather. And without even thinking of it, I just started gardening. We got a house out there, and I think it was about 6 years in. I wanted to start growing stuff, and there was a spot behind the house that was perfect. It got sun all day long, and so I bit the bullet and I think I started off with about 13 or 14 beds, and but I didn't know where I got it. I didn't think where I got it from until during the pandemic. I was doing a lot of these Zooms, cooking classes on Zoom, and it was 20 minutes of cooking and 40 minutes of chit chat. And I can't, they would always ask the question, when did you start cooking? Why did you start cooking? And a couple of things I would go back to were things that I did with my grandfather. It was fish, because we would go fishing in Barnegat Bay, mostly crabbing and clamming. And we'd catch, 2 bushels of crabs and a bushel of clams, and occasionally we'd catch fish, and we'd come home. And so I had 2 jobs. One, and I was about 7, 8 years old. I had to clean all the fish. So now I had a knife in my hand at 7 or 8 years old, cleaning and stuff. And I'd clean it all up and then bring it up to my grandmother and my mother. But that night, because it was so much food, this was a large dinner of like 20 people, and a big friends and extended family. And so at a very young age, I think what really attracted me to food, and I just kind of figured this out by telling these stories, that I think it was this whole idea that food brings people around a table. And that's what really attracted me to it. Not so much the food itself, but what the food does. And, it would always start out, the night would start off with, conversations about the fish and the fish that got away and how big it was, blah, blah, blah. And then it would, usually sports, family gossip, politics. We were all on the same page. So there wasn't a whole lot of discussions around. And my family, they were involved in politics. My dad was, he was president of his union, and he was an organizer. And, So, but there's, but I saw that this, people come around for food. And so I think that's what attracted me to it. And then gardening, it just didn't come out of the blue. And then I also think back, my grandparents on my father's side. Now, my grandfather on my father's side died in 1966, so I think I was 4. And but they had a pretty large garden.
Mm.
Like my great grandmother and would tend. And but we didn't see them as often. But again, I go back to back in my mind, and I did have examples of people gardening. So that has to be why I was attracted to it. It didn't
Yeah,
happen because I thought one day I should have a green thumb.
right.
Uh, but I'm pretty passionate about it. I love my garden. I love getting up early in the morning and hang out there with a cup of coffee and take my time and get my hands dirty. It's fun. Yeah.
There's nothing quite like it. Like my kids make fun of me all the time because I just have a raised bed on my deck. Like I don't have a real garden yet, knock on wood someday. But like last summer I grew tomatoes in this raised bed. It's like called a veg shrub, whatever. But I would treat them like they were my babies. It was
Right?
really weird. I'd get up in the morning and I'd go out and talk to them. Like, what's wrong with you?
Well, it's great when you're out there, especially if you can get out there. I these days I try to take most of the summer off, so I'm out there every day. And like one day you poke around and nothing's really happening yet, and all of a sudden you look and there's the first zucchini of the year, and then
Yeah,
you come back the following day and it's ginormous. They just grow overnight.
right.
Um, but it's something I just and there's studies done that if you spend more time in the dirt, that it's just good for your mental health. And it works for me. When I'm out there, I'm, between fishing and gardening and cooking for friends, I'm in a pretty good state of mind.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that's incredible too. And I'm trying to learn a little bit more about pollinators and trying to be like a better,
Yeah.
you know, contributor to their environments. I planted sunflowers for the first time and
Yeah.
stuff like that. I think the whole thing is it's cathartic, it's therapeutic, but it's also giving back. There's the full cycle there, the full circle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have an obvious appreciation for food and where food comes from
Right.
and what it requires.
Right.
And not everybody this day and age does at all.
Listen, one of my favorite things is to put a meal on the table with a bunch of friends where I grew all the produce,
Yeah.
I caught the fish, and the wine came from the vineyard down the street. That's a good day. That's a good
Right.
day.
Talk about local.
I feel like a real hunter gatherer. It's it's back brain. It's like what
But
I'm
it
supposed to do.
but it is, it's so basic and intrinsic to just human beings that it makes sense that it would feel that way. And I love you're talking about how food really does the thing that attracted you to it is how it brings everybody together around the table. And
Mhm.
not to get to the political conversation because I talk about politics, you might know this from time to time, because we'll get to that. But I think that that's something that's missing very much from society right now is that sense that you can break bread around the table and come together and differences aside.
Yeah, you're well, that's part of it, but you're hitting on something else that I think is really important. So, I mean, I've been involved in politics. I used to pre-Trump. I used to spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill. At least once
Hmm.
a month, I was on the Hill. I co-founded an organization called Food Policy Action, and what we did is we created a scorecard and we graded Congress and voted around food issues, but also around farming, water, and hunger being one of
Hmm.
the major things that we focus on. That came from my wife's a filmmaker, and she was mentoring a young girl who his family was living in the shelter at the time in Brooklyn, and it was clear to us whenever she came to our house that she was hungry, and we would always cook meals and send food home for her family. And she also had some learning disabilities, and so we got her into a school in New York. If the city schools can't meet the needs of the kids, you can get them into a private school, and these aren't fancy private schools, just private schools that are outside of the public school system. And we got a call the first week saying it's clear that this girl's hungry. She's asking for food. Um, because it wasn't part of the public school system, it didn't have a breakfast and lunch program.
Right.
And so my wife, prior to this, she didn't do documentaries, but she decided to look into hunger in America and what's the cause of hunger in America. And after, the research that when she started doing the research, it was pretty obvious that um, people here aren't hungry because of war or famine or drought. It's because we don't have the political will to make sure people are fed. That we want to shrink all these programs that help people, and that put us squarely, in the middle of policy and politics. And so from there, I started Food Policy Action. So I would go up on the Hill, especially when the Farm Bill was being debated, when school lunch was being debated, because it's outside of the Farm Bill, and would have several meetings, and then Shelley Pingree, who's a congresswoman from Maine, we would always end up back at her house, and she had this great townhouse, and a bunch of members would come out, usually like 60 members, and from both sides of the aisle, actually, which is interesting because outside the cameras, they actually do spend time together.
Yeah, especially the senators. Yeah.
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 Well, when a senator came, that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was mostly the House members, and when a senator showed up, it was like, "Ooh, senator! Wow!"
Right.
I spent a good amount of time, and most of my meetings were with Republicans, because Democrats were, happy to expand SNAP, food stamps and
Yeah.
school lunch, like that. Republicans, you had to talk them into it, so I had to come up with a different set of languages and figure out a different way to appeal to Republicans. And usually I did it not in terms of, and I would always say, listen, okay, you can call me a bleeding heart liberal, and that's why I want to feed people. That's fine. But let's talk about, preparedness for our armed service. 25% of the recruits who join the service wash out because they're obese, which is actually part and parcel of bad nutrition, which is part and parcel of hunger too. And so let's talk about that. Let's talk about how, kids are showing up to school hungry so they can't learn. And if you want to break that cycle of poverty, right, education is the way to do that. And yet you're sending these kids to school and they're hungry. So let's fix some of these problems. You talk about just the fact that if we want to compete, everyone has to contribute. And so if especially that first 1,000 days, that nutrition is so important in a kid's life. And so you find different ways to appeal to people. And often it worked. Yeah.
I mean, you've been
not always.
you've been ringing the alarm on this, as you said, for a really long time, and it's extremely relevant now. All that work that you did, all the advocacy, but now we're looking at 15 Republican-led states that have refused to accept the summer food assistance program that's been rolled out by the Biden administration. I mean, that's leaving 8 million kids in this country without food in the summer.
It's just crazy. I mean, it's not costing them anything. There's some administrative costs that they have to incur.
Yeah.
That's it. But why would you do this? I mean, are you that cruel? Like, why would you do this? And this is where you have to hope that this food movement that people talked about, it's really a social movement. It's not as much. It has become a political movement, and that was our goal with Food Policy Action. And in fact, we got involved in one campaign. We didn't have a lot of money. We always fighting to raise money, but we didn't have a ton of money. But we got involved in one campaign. This is going back, I think it was the midterms in 2018, where Democrats just got crushed. But we won. We got involved in one race, Stephen Sutherland, Florida, and he was up against Gwen Graham. Now, Gwen Graham had a great name. Her father was a senator, and I think governor at one point of Florida. So she had name recognition, but we spent some money, especially on college campuses, and she won. Went won, and I gave a TED talk, and pretty much said that this becomes a movement, a political movement, when someone loses their job for a vote, and he lost a job in the way he voted. And so that's, our goal was always to try to change the language around hunger. Let people know that it's a problem that we could solve, because we pretty much eradicated hunger back in the 70s. And then when Reagan became president, everything was changed, and it was about cutting government, and we saw hunger spike. So we solved the problem once before. Why is it important that we solve the problem? But then also make sure that if someone voted against, like if someone's cutting school lunch in the summer, that they pay a political price for that. And get it to the point where maybe it's not going to be a single issue that people vote on, like guns or like access to abortion rights. Those are single subjects people will come out and vote for, and we were trying to make hunger that. And maybe it wasn't a single subject, but hopefully it could be the third on the list. But someone's got to pay a price for this.
And it's more universal than than most things are. I mean, it's really not a partisan issue. We're talking about feeding people. We're talking about, especially when it comes to children, but like some of the states, some of the 15 states that have refused this assistance have the highest rates of hunger and not coincidentally, right? But also the highest rates of both obesity and diabetes.
Yep,
And
exactly.
right, it's all connected, like you said.
Well, it's all connected because what's in this country, nutrition's expensive, but calories are cheap,
Right.
right?
Right.
If you can buy, garbage that has a lot of calories, so you feed yourself, but there's no nutrition, and it's a lot of fat and a lot of sugar, and that's
Mhm.
why you see obesity and hunger in the same family often. And that's a bigger problem that we can, it's hard to figure out a way to shrink those prices down, get the price of fruits and vegetables down, partly because they're not really commodities like grain is,
Yeah.
it is, and so it's a little more complicated. But there are good programs out there. So there's an organization called Wholesome Wave, and they um, uh, got written into policy what's called the Double Bucks program. I think the Double Bucks program was started in Michigan, but then Wholesome Wave took it on. So what it is if you're using SNAP in a farmer's market, right? Well, farmers markets are expensive.
Hmm.
If you're using SNAP, so say you spend $20 on fruits and vegetables, you can go to a kiosk with that receipt and they'll give you another coupon for $20
Right.
that you can spend in the farmer's market. So now you double up your purchasing power in the farmer's market. So now it's great. Now there's an incentive for people to buy healthier food. Number two, all of that money goes to the farmer.
Hmm.
It doesn't go to some large food company. And so all of that money now is spent in that community because a farmer's not going to put that money in the bank. They're going to spend it on seeds and labor and equipment. And
Yeah.
so every dollar that is spent, it creates $1.75 of economic activity. And so this is a great program. It's a win-win for everybody. But this is also why it passed and became part of the permanent farm bill, because you had Republicans who were very happy for the farmers who were typically conservative to keep that money. And at the same time, hungry people got better nutrition.
It
So
seems, yeah,
right.
there are fixes out there. I mean, of course, there's also the subsidies of grain and corn and
Yeah, yeah, there's changed a little bit. They're no longer, we pretty much got rid of direct payments where they're paying to grow stuff, but it's
Mhm.
changed. Now it's more of an insurance policy, but it's not insurance the way we know insurance. It's to guarantee a price.
Right.
So that's what's insured. And but the farmer doesn't pay the premiums, the government
Hmm.
does.
Right.
And the insurance company doesn't pay for any claims. The government
Hmm.
does. So the insurance company just sits in the middle and processes everything, but it's a government program.
So I have my
Yeah.
own theories about why these Republican governors are letting those kids starve. I have lots and lots of theories about it, but I
Let's
worked
hear
in a
some.
well, I worked in a school for a long time actually, and not too long ago, for 7 years, I was a paraprofessional for autistic preschoolers, and one of my fun jobs was to go to lunch every day. And
Right.
one of the things that I noticed first, really, it was shocking actually, was how many kids didn't have lunch, didn't
Yeah.
have anything to eat, and it was just one of those things where a teacher or an aide would bring them something to eat. And then I was realizing just how pervasive hunger was, even in my own town. My kids didn't even know that their peers were sitting next to kids that were starving. And then
Right.
when the pandemic hit and the food was going home with these kids, they're getting a breakfast for the next morning. They were getting lunch that day. And I was realizing those are the only meals those kids are having. Fast forward to now, and Republicans are doing this where in these red states are refusing this money, even though they're the hungriest states and the poorest states in the country. And knowing what going to school hungry does to children and their ability to learn, and knowing the shame that's associated with parents not wanting to say their kid is hungry, it actually reduces their ability to learn. And there is this dumbing down of America. This is my theory that Republicans find very advantageous. I don't know. That's one of my theories, but I don't know. What do
Uh,
you think? Why do you think they're doing it?
they're doing it because they don't believe in government. They don't believe government has a role to do anything except defend the country. And to other than that, I don't know. The problem is I think most Republicans have all become libertarians these days. They really
Hmm.
don't believe in government until
Yeah.
they need. When your house burns down, you don't call a bucket brigade,
Right.
in the neighborhood anymore to put out the fire. There's a fire department there, and
Hmm.
it's government funded, and maybe it's local government, but it's still government.
Yeah.
Um, it's I don't know anymore. I think it's just become a game, and they want to stay in power, and the people who vote, and this is the problem, they know who's voting. The
Hmm.
people who are voting are people who, don't have that issue.
Yeah.
And they're very happy to make sure that that person has a hard time voting because they'll shut down polling places in those neighborhoods and they'll make it difficult for them to vote. And so, I don't I hope it's not because they want to dumb down America. Uh,
I really do
they're,
believe it.
they're already dumb enough. Um, no, I just think they're cruel. I just don't think they care. They
Mm.
don't care. They really believe in this whole thing where pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Well, what if you don't have boots on? You know,
Hmm.
what do you do?
Right.
It's just a bad way of thinking. And they also really believe that this is a responsibility of churches and other organizations. Well, the SNAP program is an $80 billion program. There
Hmm.
is no way that, and listen, I spent most of my professional career raising money for hunger organizations, doing events for Share Our Strength, for New York Food Bank, for City Harvest, for Meals on Wheels. We would have to do a fundraiser, and some of these fundraisers raised, $2-3 million a night. You would have to do this every single night,
Right.
and you do it in every community every single night.
Hmm.
So this is no way to take care of people. And then there's the myths too, is this idea that people are on food stamps forever. No, the average person's on food stamps for about 6-7 months.
Right.
If you're a single able-bodied adult, you can receive food stamps. I think it's 3 or 4 months for any 3 years. That's it. So this
Hmm.
nonsense that you see on Fox News where someone's buying lobster tails and steaks with food stamps is just ridiculous.
Right.
It doesn't happen. And on top of that, most people who receive food stamps are working. They're
Hmm.
working 2, 3 jobs to try to make ends meet. So it's not a bunch of lazy people who are just collecting, you know, they're on the dole. It's just not, if you want to keep minimum wage low,
Yeah.
people can be hungry. So you're essentially subsidizing minimum wage jobs,
Hmm.
right? Because the companies don't have to pay for a living wage, right?
Hmm.
Um, so how is that made up? So
Yeah.
which way do you have it? If you raise minimum wage, national minimum wage to 13, $14 an hour, you'll have fewer people on food stamps. It's that
Right.
simple. Because they're working. They don't want to do that.
And I'll bet a lot of them, not only did they maybe have their own chance to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but then they pulled the ladder behind them. A lot of them probably benefited from the very same programs that they're trying to cut now. And then they're coming for WIC now, is what they call food stamps, I think, is WIC now. And
No, no, no. WIC is a
oh,
different program. Stamps. SNAP is food stamps. WIC is
SNAP is
is
food
for
stamps.
women, infants, and children.
Right. Okay.
So it's for pregnant women and for children, I think under two. It's a separate supplemental program.
Which they're
Of
also targeting, I believe.
course they are. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
they're and they'll try to target school lunch too.
Oh,
It's not
100%.
not part of the farm bill, but it's a separate program. But
Right.
they'll target that as well.
And
Um,
that's the thing is that how it is cruelty is the point. But like if they've been there, I mean, I personally have experienced food insecurity. When at the beginning of COVID, I was going through a divorce and I didn't have income in that summer. And there's for whatever reason, my ex stopped paying support. So I had a summer with no income and no support.
right,
And my friends were literally dropping off food in my car so that my kids didn't know that we didn't have food.
right,
And anybody who's walked through that for even a minute has to know that that's horrible and that you can't do that to your fellow man. Like they pretend to be Christians, right? They pretend to be
right.
pro-life, and
And,
yet that they'll do this to people.
yeah, what I was hoping is, so we all saw the news reports of, in Texas or Alabama, where you saw the long lines, like these long lines of people who were lined up to get food. Because
Hmm.
a lot of people were out of work. A lot of people were in your situation. And but you saw these cars in these lines, and these were Mercedes and BMWs.
Hmm.
So these people at one point were solidly middle class, and now not for anything they did, not because they were lazy. They
Right.
found themselves where they couldn't afford food. And so
Yeah.
I was hoping that there'd be a deeper sense of empathy for someone who's going through that and struggling. And it seemed to last for a short time, and now it's back to where it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now there's governors of states like targeting school lunches and making it a
Yeah.
campaign issue where they're not going to
One of those,
provide
and one of those governors running for president.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
exactly. Exactly. But the back to you said too before about them accepting the fire truck's help or the fire department's help, that governor will accept FEMA's help when they have, a natural disaster.
Course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, oh well, we don't want FEMA money. No, it's government money. We don't want it.
Hmm.
But That and not taking, accepting Medicaid. These hospitals in rural areas are closing because they can't stay open because they just don't want to, they'll just deny, expanding Medicaid. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And you'd hope that enough people would just vote these people out. And that's what you have to hope, that there's a process for this. And if you're that cruel, you need to get punished.
I think sometimes, I think what we're looking at now is that is really people voting against their own self-interest, but there's also that element where with all the gerrymandering and stuff, it's really hard to break
Yeah.
these cycles. It's really hard, but it's not impossible. Right, as we've seen in places like Wisconsin, but it is really hard, but it is up to the people ultimately to take the power back.
Wisconsin, that took a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. I mean, I'm part of a private Twitter group that focused a lot on Wisconsin. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
it's
um,
near and dear to my heart too. Incredibly
yeah.
important.
There was a lot of work that was put into that. Yeah,
And I would argue that that's the best run Democratic Party in the country is Wisdoms. I would
yep,
definitely argue with that. Yeah.
it
They
is.
make
They
things
do a great
happen.
job. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
We need
You
more
know,
like that.
yeah, we do.
But I want to just maybe touch on restaurants for 1 second, because maybe if some of these Republicans had ever waited tables for one hot second, maybe they'd be better human beings. I don't know. You agree? I think I've heard you say, I know I will die on this hill.
Everyone should wait tables once in their life.
One,
Everyone.
you have to do it.
Mhm. Yeah.
You, I will die on that hill, 1000%.
Yeah. Oh, so while we're hungry, one other thing I wanted to bring up. One thing that I'm not spending as much time, on the Hill, but I will get involved with this, obviously the election, but the Farm Bill. Um, but one of the rules around SNAP that I just find infuriating is, um, right now we have just a tremendous amount of hunger on college campuses,
Hmm.
especially for first generation college, people who are in college, um, where they can't afford a meal plan. They,
Hmm.
maybe their scholarship, they get into school, they pay some money and they can't afford a meal plan. There are food pantries on every college campus nowadays. In order to receive SNAP, if you're a college student, so one of the requirements is that you work 20 hours a week. How insane is that?
Where, how are you going to go to college?
Right. You're supposed to work 20 hours a week just to receive food stamps to go to college, which is it's just crazy,
Yeah,
crazy. But that's one thing we're trying to overturn. Because
that's
it's
great.
painful. Yeah. And again, if you want, more people going to college, especially your first generation, your first person in your family to go to college, you want to make it easier, not harder. And
It,
a lot of these kids have to drop out because they don't have housing and they don't have food.
right. And it's just, it's feeding itself in this and never ending cycle. Will there, that segment of the population will never have an opportunity to move out of that, their lot in life, because
Yeah,
that's how the system is set up. Yeah.
exactly.
I appreciate that you're targeting that. I didn't even know that. I did know, or at least I have a sense of an idea of what happened with, there was one compromise with SNAP made the last time we didn't shut the government down with McCarthy, the thing that got McCarthy vacated. I
Right.
feel like they did change some requirements for age or something like that related to, maybe they lowered the age. I forget what it
Now,
was.
the big thing that happened during the pandemic is so there's something called a food plan. And the food plan is used to calculate how many calories a soldier needs,
Okay.
um, how much support someone who's divorced gets. It's called the food plan. And again, depending on how many children you have, how much money and alimony needs to be allocated towards food, or how
Hmm.
much it's calculated into the overall alimony. Also used to calculate uh, how much you receive in benefits for assistance, depending on your income.
Right.
That was changed. So it went from the thrifty plan to the low plan. So they put more dollars in people's pockets. That was the big change that happened to the SNAP program in the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Well,
it's so technical. Yeah.
yeah. So how do we get this change in terms of the college requirement? How do we, again, who
You
are
know,
you?
this is going to sound trite. And when we were doing the film, Congressman McGovern, who is the best when it comes to hunger issues. He's from the Worcester area in Massachusetts. He was the head up the Rules Committee when Democrats were had the majority in the House. And it's just a great guy. He would tell us that if he got 6 phone calls about something, he would pay attention to it. And so this is something where call your member and tell them, say, this is important to me. And even if it's a Democrat and you think they're all honest, they may not know about this. But if you call and say, I'm really concerned that, one of the SNAP requirements is for a college student has to work 20 hours before they can receive a SNAP. They may not even know that, right? You tell them this is important to you and you'd like to see it changed. It helps. It really does. When they hear from constituents, they listen. Our ex-member of Congress who was out in Long Island, Lee Zeldin, who was terrible on most things. I called him up. So we got very involved in GMO. For me, it was labeling. I just wanted it labeled, and not with a skull and crossbones, just something on the back that says, if it was a corn, that it just said made from GMO corn, right? That was all I cared about. There were other people who wanted to get rid of it, whatever, but that was my issue. And so the day of the vote, I called Congressman Zeldin and said, I'm a constituent. There's a vote today. This is what I think. This is what I'd like you to do. And I also said, you have a lot of corn growers in your district out in Long Island, especially on the North Fork. They don't grow GMO corn. Because GMO corn is really hard corn to feed cattle.
Yeah.
And so it's very different. And so they don't benefit from this at all. So it's not going to hurt them at all. And he voted that way. He one of the few Republicans that did. So they do, and he didn't know who I was. He wasn't like I was some celebrity calling him. He had no idea.
Yeah.
And it was very funny because I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm going to be on the Hill. I'd love to meet you. And at this point, I think he had the sense then of who I was. And so he said, well, don't meet in my office. I want to meet on the stairs because he wanted a photo op. And I was like, okay, it's fine. So I met him. And then I had another ask for him. There was a fisheries vote that I wanted him to vote on, but I don't think he voted that way. I wanted him to vote on that one. But they, there's a lot of horse trading. So Don Young, who was a congressman from Alaska, they're only one congressman that they had. And this Don he was a real character. I think he passed away a little while ago. You go into his office and he was a hunter, like a big game hunter, and there were heads of animals all over his office,
Why would
every square inch. And you walk in, and he was like wanted to try to intimidate you. But I walked in one of the meetings to talk about SNAP, and I made my argument, and he was like, "I don't know how I'm going to vote on this, but it's a good argument. It was nice meeting with you, whatever." So about a month later, I got a call from him, and so I need a favor from you. So what? So I got a great idea. It's going to help. You care about hunger. This is going to help. I'm like, okay. He said, I'm trying to pass a bill where hunters, if they kill an animal and they butcher it and they bring the meat to a food bank, that they get a tax break for that. I say, yeah, it's all about your tax breaks, huh? He goes, and I was like, okay. I said, Congressman Young, this is not going to make a dent in hunger at all. You realize that. And he's like, well, it's not. I'll help. I'll support you here. I said, "Folks coming," and I think he ended up voting the right way. But this is how stuff happens,
Yeah.
But I don't spend as. I mean, once the pandemic hit, I stopped going, and food policy action we're no longer around. But I'm trying to figure out how I can get back up there.
I think that's great.
I enjoy doing it.
It's important. It's incredibly important. And you're a powerful advocate for something that I think a lot of Americans who aren't experiencing it don't think about every day. But when it's in front of them, and this is increasingly becoming in front of them, and we're facing a threat in this election where this will be even more so in front of them, where, we'll have those in power who don't care at all about feeding anybody, let alone kids.
Unfortunately, this election, something like hunger it's like, it's just not going to break through because we're looking at whether or not we're going to be a democracy anymore. So
I agree with you, but at the same time, I would say that where I think we have the most room is on these issues where we don't have the most divergence. I actually think, like, on repro and on this issue, because I think it's getting a lot more traction recently, and I think people are starting to pay closer attention to the state levels for sure. It's
Yeah.
not just the top of the ticket, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm an optimist.
I am too. I listen, I follow this stuff pretty closely. I know you do as well. And when you have about 150,000 people come out and vote in Iowa of a population of 3 million,
Yeah.
right? 150,000 came out to vote. So it's great. Half of them voted for me. 50,000 people voted for you.
Yeah.
You're gonna call that a victory? Give me a break.
It was
It's
like
like
0.001687% or something. Yeah.
It's like there's no excitement, and quite frankly, I think that his base. I have an argument with my wife all the time. His base. Who cares about his base?
Yep.
You got to care about independent voters.
Mhm.
That's what swings the election. The swing voters, independent voters. That's it. There's also a lot of Republicans that are never Trumpers.
Yeah.
They're registered Republicans. They won't vote for him. It's either they're not going to vote or they'll vote for Biden. And
Mhm.
quite frankly, I'm just amazed that I think Biden's doing a great job.
Me too.
I do. Is he old? Yeah, he's old. So,
Yeah.
okay. He's making a lot of right moves. Yeah. I mean, every single president's going to have some rough patches, but I think overall on balance, he's done a great job. I mean, you can tout unemployment. You can tout that it looks like we're going to head for a soft landing. Now, again, that was not him. That's an independent what do you call running out of words. But it's I think overall he's done a good job.
Yeah.
And I think he's in a really tough place with
Gaza.
I was gonna say Israel. Yeah, really tough place there because I think that, I believe that Israel has a right to defend itself, but maybe they've gone a little too far. And but that's all political. That's because that's Netanyahu,
Right.
who's no friend to us on the left.
Nope.
The only way he's gonna stay in power is keep this war going. And I think Biden knows that. And we'd love to see him go.
Yeah. His approval rating is horrific. I mean,
far more. I mean, there were millions of people marching in the streets of Tel Aviv to get rid of him prior to the Hamas killing people and raping. Yeah.
It's one
tough position to be in. And then the war seems to be expanding because these Houthi rebels decide that they just want to get, the only way to stay relevant is to do this. And so, it's a tough position to be in. But you think Trump would do anything different?
Well,
he'd be more in bed with Netanyahu.
Exactly. Well, he and Netanyahu are very much cut from the same cloth. I mean, they're both wannabe dictators. Netanyahu's probably even arguably, I can't argue that, but maybe worse. But yeah, he said today, the AP story broke that he said today he doesn't want a two-state solution. He doesn't believe that Palestine has a right to exist, which we already knew.
But he has to say that because the only way he has a coalition is to create a far-right coalition.
Yeah.
And these far-right people, they're messianic, crazy people, and they don't believe in a two-state solution. But most of Israel does. I just want to be secure. Listen, I guarantee you tomorrow, if someone said Palestine keeps everything in the West Bank, Gaza, it's yours. It's a two-state solution. Just stop attacking us. It'd be over in a heartbeat.
I agree, and I'm Arab, and I also implore my fellow Arabs out there not to make some false equivalency between a Biden administration and a Trump administration, because now what they're saying is they'll sit out voting, period, which of course is a vote for Trump or what's going to be Trump. Because
I guess your relatives from overseas are not going to be able to come here anymore because he's going to ban you again. He already said he would.
He says he'll worse than that, he'll deport you and
So
then surveil your mosques if they're allowed to be open at all.
Yep.
While telling MAGA to shoot you. Handing them an AR-15 and then saying, if they look suspicious, just shoot them.
Stand your ground.
Yeah.
Crazy time.
And I will say that, yeah, I agree with you 100% that I think Biden has navigated. I mean, you didn't say this exactly, but I think he's navigated a very, very, very rife with, opportunities for missteps situation very adeptly. That I think comes from his age, which, yes, I just said out loud because he's been
Experience.
experience, right? Which was born in, yeah, right, not age. He's not old, by the way. He's only 3 years older than Trump. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for having those conversations with me. Also, thank you for your advocacy. I wanted to pivot really fast because I always end every podcast with what I call the rapid fire random question round.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. This question, the first question, comes from my 14-year-old son, Leo, who has said out loud that his dream job is to be a chef. Oh, yeah, God help me. All my chef friends have told him not to, but it's fine. He wants to make meat. Okay. So he asked me to ask you, if aliens came to Earth and asked you to prepare for them the perfect meal, what would it be?
That's pretty funny. You remember? I don't know if you remember the Twilight Zone.
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, there was one episode in the Twilight Zone, and it was a book, but the rest it was a recipe how to serve man, and the book was like man, but it was actually a cookbook, a recipe for cooking people. So maybe I'll open up that book if that's what they want. I don't know. That's a creepy question. What are you feeding your son? Jesus God. I don't know.
This is my kid, though.
It's a good. I don't know. I think. Well, why are they coming here? And
My
what
people were thinking
what am I trying to say by this? Like, I don't know.
this. Okay. What if it was your perfect idea of a meal? Would it be that like the clams you and your dad got down?
Maybe, people ask me the question like, what's my deathbed meal? And I
Yeah.
always say Sunday gravy. Growing up
Okay.
every Sunday, we gravy. It was tomato, but meatballs and sausage and all that good stuff. My dog's downstairs.
Ruby.
And so that's the meal that I want on my deathbed. But I don't know. It's like
Maybe aliens would want that Sunday gravy. I don't know what kind of pasta you're serving with it. Because what my ex's family is Italian, but like not a lot Italian, enough Italian that they say gavadils.
okay.
Yes.
Nowadays.
Cavatelli. So I never knew that was cavatelli until many, many, many years
Yeah,
later. Because I'm
exactly.
Lebanese and we didn't have gavadils or cavatelli. We had like
Yeah.
friggin',
Yeah,
Lebanese rice. We didn't have any of that
and
stuff.
you probably
So,
had prosciutto and that prosciutto
oh
and
yeah,
and and
prosciutto, manigot. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. With the
yeah.
gumads, or whatever they call them. Yeah, it's like the Sopranos. Yeah. So what kind of pasta are you serving with your Sunday gravy? Spaghetti?
Well, growing up, it wasn't pasta; it was macaroni. And
Right. Okay.
a lot of cavatelli or gavadels.
Yeah.
And, it could be fusilli. Maybe that's fun for them. I don't know.
I don't know. Because like I like a stabbable pasta. Whatever. I'm going on a tangent.
Next
Okay.
question.
Second question. As a kid, what was your shore town? Because I was a Sandy Hook kid.
Oh, I used to go to Manasquan and Belmar.
Mm.
Young, we used to go to my cousin, who was married into a family had a house in Orly Beach, so we used to go there too. But when I was old enough to go myself, I would go to Belmar and Manasquan.
So pretty there. Yeah. Have you been to Asbury Park recently?
Not recently, but I know it's changed, but it's still going through changes.
Yeah.
Again, my brother lives in Brielle, so
Right.
I was there to see him on Christmas Eve, but we didn't go out. We were in the house. But yeah, things have changed on the Jersey Shore. Yeah.
Asbury Park is my beach town now, but the restaurant scene in Asbury Park is
I
legit.
hear. That's
Yeah.
what I hear.
Yeah, no joke. I mean, and Porta's, well, their pizza's gotten, I don't think it's as good as it used to be, but their pizza's also no joke.
Yeah, there's an Italian restaurant that my brother swears by. He says it's really great and it's packed. He said you can't get, even in the off season, you cannot get into it.
Oh,
I'm not sure.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I know
It's
we love the tomato pie on the boardwalk. So I'm with the kids that I don't usually go fancy, or we go to there's a
I have a house out in Long Island, all the way on the North Fork, not the Hamptons. I don't do the Hamptons. I'm on the North Fork, so I spend my summer out there.
yeah. I have never been to the North Fork. I've been to Fire Island, but I've been to the Hamptons and I've been to Montauk, but that's not the North Fork, right? Montauk's
Oh,
on
so the fork breaks splits off, and Montauk is the end of the South Fork.
Okay.
Orient Point is the end of the North Fork.
Right. Okay. Let's just have the Connecticut Sound or whatever that is right there.
Well, we have the Sound in the Bay, so we have the Sound,
Yeah.
Long Island Sound,
Right.
to Connecticut, and then we have the Peconic Bay, which is in between the two forks. So we don't have
Okay.
the
beautiful there, though, I heard. And
Yeah,
you
it's
have
great.
wineries, like you said.
Yeah, they're wineries. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an agricultural area, and a lot of the agriculture going back to about 30 years ago, when the first winery was planted. Hargrave, I think, was the first winery there, and since then, there's probably 50 wineries. And I look at my backyard, I see grapes.
Jeez.
And, yeah, it's
Sounds
really
like a
nice.
girl's trip to me right there.
It is, and a lot of the wineries are good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like
Yeah.
ice wine? Is it? Because we
No,
have
no,
like
no, no.
Concord wine, Concord grape wine here in Jersey. It's
A lot
not
of
great.
Sauvignon Blanc,
Huh.
Merlot, Cab, Chardonnay, Viognier. It's a lot of different varietals. Pinot Noir doesn't go very well there, but a lot of, Cabernet Franc probably is the best grape there.
Hmm.
And two best wines are McCarry, probably my favorite vineyard out there. And then the other really great one is McCall's. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, really high quality, really quality wines. In fact, the Bergen Road, McCarry Bergen Road won, best in show some major wine competitions. Yeah, they're really good. It's world class.
McCary. You're
That's
gonna have to add a vineyard to your collection of
yeah.
on.
Unfortunately, because I hold liquor license, I can't produce wine.
Oh,
In New York, there's a three-tiered system. So you can either make liquor or wine, you can wholesale it or retail it.
oh,
That's
you
it.
can't do all of the
Can't
above.
can't have two of those licenses, only one. Now I can have it in my wife's name, I guess, or I can put it
Yeah.
in trust or something, but it's I got enough to do.
Yeah, you can, yeah, I didn't even ask you about your sauces, which I have to try. Yeah, because my son wants to try those too. You
Okay.
said fennel. It was in one of them, and he was like, Mom, I love fennel because that's my kid. All right, last question. Oh, this is a long one. I feel bad. Okay, it's not long, but okay. Is there, everyone has that one story, that one restaurant story. For me, I can think of it very clearly because I was at the Cub Room and a very rich guy with a black Amex, was upset about his meal and he went into the bathroom and he wiped his poop all over the walls in the bathroom. That was my
Beautiful.
crazy restaurant story. Do you have one where people are like, no way that happened? That didn't happen.
I mean, I've been working in restaurants for 40 years and there's so many stories, people running scams at the bar trying to steal stuff and you catch them, you throw them out and they start giving you a
Mm-hmm.
hard time in front of the restaurant. Cops come, they tell them to stop and they can't keep themselves from, mouthing off and they get arrested.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that's great.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to say because you're in there all the time. I love people like they steal stuff. They think for some reason they can just it's like restaurants, you can just steal stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so what we like to do if we catch you, putting silverware in your pocketbook, we just don't say anything. We just put it on the bill.
Right.
Like, yes, you wanted it, so we're gonna charge you for it. No,
Brilliant.
you still
Yeah.
want it? But no, it's there's crazy people out there. But
Yeah,
it
we had this guy pretending to be French who kept coming into the Cub Room, and they gave him a house tab, and they were all friends with him. He would get the best table in the restaurant. They would bring him foie gras and caviar and all the things, Cristal, and then he ended up on the news years and years later on like one of those NBC like prime time,
Mhm.
whatever they're called, as this con artist who was traveling the world doing this and running up all
Yeah.
these tabs and running off, never paying them.
Yeah, we just had a guy who gave us a credit card. It didn't go through for a private party and didn't go through. We called him. And it turned out he was just like, his business closed and he was just scamming people. It's like kind of his last, it was like, it's like $3,000 bill he walked out on. Like,
Crazy. Oh my gosh. I was that's like people are nuts. I hope the servers, everybody got their money anyway. I
oh
mean,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's our fault, not their fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's a million. It's restaurant. During the pandemic, it got really funny. People were just so irate about everything.
Yeah.
But it's kind of calmed down a bit. But we don't get too many crazies in. When I
That's
was at
good.
Garrison Tavern, there was more crazy stuff happening. Not so
Really?
much. Yeah, this is where I always like, you'd see people like you'd see them like trying to work the room, like the bar especially. They try to like create a commotion and grab a pocketbook,
Oh
and you'd
shit.
see it happening,
Wow.
and you'd stop them, and they're no, I'm not doing that. It's like I watched you do it. Yeah.
That
But
I went there and I think is it possible it was 99? It was
sure,
open. Yeah.
we went in '94, I think.
Yeah, so it was still a table you couldn't get. And
Oh
then I
yeah,
remember my now ex was like, I called every day for like a week straight, and we finally got a table like late, like
yeah, yeah. It
9:30
was
or
later
something.
early. That was it. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
that was
awesome.
Yeah, that's Gramercy is 30 years old this year. Because Kraft is 23. Yeah, yeah.
That's, yeah. Now
Doing
I
this
feel
long. Yeah, yeah,
old. Yeah, I moved out of the city in 2000, so I really
yeah.
feel, yeah. Um, wow, this was incredible. I'm still fangirling. I'm probably going to be fangirling for the next couple hours, just to let you know. Um, thank you so much. And oh yeah, your sauces. I was curious about those. Okay, so you've got that
Jersey
just
tomato.
okay, Jersey tomato,
Jersey tomato. Yep.
which by the way, we do have the best tomatoes.
We do. Now it's called Colicchio Collection. And I think Colicchio, yeah, I think it's Colicchio Collection or Colicchio Kitchen. But yeah, it's Jersey tomatoes. It's great sauce. It's
Yeah.
real simple. There's tomatoes. It's tomato, there's olive oil, salt, pepper, little onion, garlic. That's it.
See,
No
as a
sugar.
I heard you say no sugar. And as a person who has always been intimidated by trying to make red sauce because I married a sort of Italian guy in a sort of Italian family, I would always be scared. So I just used jarred sauce, and everyone was like, "You can't do that." I'm like, "But you know what? Why not? Why
Yeah,
can't I?"
but so this is good jarred sauce, but it's so easy to make sauce.
You know, it's scary.
No,
I can make tabbouleh and hummus.
that's good too.
Yeah, but I can't make red
That's
sauce.
actually that food, the whole Middle Eastern thing is having such a moment now. That food, it's become the hottest thing.
It's so
Uh,
good
yeah, it's great. Yeah, I love
and,
those flavors.
and good for you. Yeah,
It
and
is.
yeah, I think that's what made my kids foodies. By the way, if you, I don't know if you've been in the markets in Patterson, the little,
No,
there's Fatals and Nouri's.
no, I haven't been to Patterson long. I used to date someone who lived in Patterson, right near the waterfalls, and but she was a photographer. It's probably still is. I haven't seen her for ages. But
Hmm.
that was the only time I ever went to Patterson to see her. But I
Yeah.
haven't been there.
That's where my
So
dad, when he came here from Lebanon, that's where they moved
yeah.
to. That's where everybody lived. And so we would go there as kids because there are a couple Lebanese, well, Middle Eastern markets there where you can get fresh pita in the bag and it's steaming still as you
Oh,
take it
cool.
home. So good.
Yeah, no, I haven't spent much time in that area.
Just
I don't
really
get
good.
to Jersey much anymore. I still get there. My brother coaches high school at Elizabeth High School.
Oh,
He was at Linden for years, and then a couple of years back, 3 or 4 years ago, switched over to Elizabeth. And we went. He graduated from Elizabeth High, but then ended up
right.
coaching Linden's right next door,
Yeah.
and there were always rivalries.
Right.
And so I still go to into Elizabeth to see a game every now and then.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
got to come in and have some Taylor ham, egg, and cheese on a hard roll.
Taylor ham.
Taylor ham. Stop saying pork roll, and there is no
Not
such
pork
thing
roll.
as Central Jersey. It is not pork roll.
I
Um,
would cut this whole interview short if you said it was pork roll. I would have just said
no, I would be betraying my people. I'm a Northern Jersey girl. It's like saying I root for the Eagles. Like it's
exactly,
Taylor
exactly.
ham.
Oh, from
It's
Cherry Hill.
right, right. Tom's River. Like stop.
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
Taylor ham. Yeah, I'll die on that hill.
There's a piece of New Jersey that is south of the Mason-Dixon line.
What?
This is
Wait,
true.
how
This
did
is
that?
tr- this is true. There's some far south Jersey stuff, and they're exactly as you expect them to be.
Oh, well, I mean, like I said, I grew up
The
in
Confederate flag flying, and it's like,
Sussex County. So,
yeah,
yeah, I call it Jersey, West Virginia, because our congressman up there, he flew a Confederate flag on his house. Yep,
really,
in New Jersey. Mhm.
New Jersey.
Oh yeah, I would if my car. No, I'm not giving anybody any ideas, but if my car were to like break down in Sussex County, in certain parts of Sussex County, and I knocked on a door, there's a fair chance that that person would be wearing my skin the next day if they knew who I was. Let's just put it that
Man,
way.
you can make a lot of friends out there in Sussex County today.
I mean, I'm in Warren County now, so it's not a lot better. But I love all my people. I do love you guys, but it is very MAGA here. So it's, they've accepted me. They know I'm safe, as a Democrat. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. No, I would never say pork roll. God, my heart stopped. Really, truly, thank you for the next season of Top Chef
Yes.
is March.
I think March, April, somewhere in there. Yeah,
And there's a
it's
big
we're in
change.
Wisconsin. We're in Wisconsin.
And there's a big
Host change.
change.
Big host change. Kristen Kish is our new host, and she
I
is
love her.
fantastic. She was great. She was very nervous the first day, and after that, just kind of slid into it and was just great. Yeah,
I mean, she's like Padma. She's gorgeous and she's incredible and she's smart and she's articulate. And I loved her season and I'm so excited. Like I think this is going to be great. In
I
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin. Yeah, there's some cool stuff happening there. It was fun. It was fun to do.
Yeah,
There
that's cool.
there will be cheese.
Will be
There,
cheese
and there'll definitely be beer. Cheese and
and
beer
there
and sausages. It's
and
all
democracy. And in Wisconsin, there's going to be democracy and Janet
there is.
Protasiewicz because I
There
learned how
is.
to say that.
There is. I gotta say, Madison is pretty hip.
Yeah,
Talk
that's
about
on my
a best farmers market I've ever seen.
okay.
The crazy thing is you go there and everybody goes in one direction. You can't go in two directions. You have to go in one direction. It's like going to Mecca. You can only go in one direction. It was great.
Can you imagine
Yeah,
somebody in New Jersey trying to do
yeah.
it?
Yeah,
Like, are you?
you all go, no, you had if you because what happens if I go in the other direction? That's what people will tell you to turn around. And they're so polite there too. So they'll politely tell you to turn around. But
Oh.
it was great. It was great. Yeah, the market was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, Madison is on my bucket list because I've been like you, very interested, keenly interested in Wisconsin, still very interested in Wisconsin because where Wisconsin goes, America goes. I fully believe this. So I was like, I'm going to go to Madison in 2024. I don't have any plans to, but I'm going to make it happen because
Yeah.
everyone says it's great.
It's fun. It really is. It's also what's cool is you could do Chicago and Madison. Chicago's a great, especially for food, really great food. But you can do because it's only like an hour away. Yeah,
Oh, well,
yeah.
that's
So
perfect.
you can get the car. Yeah.
I'm going to be in Chicago in August for the DNC, so I will probably try and figure that
Oh,
out.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've never been to Chicago either, which is crazy. My kids have been to Chicago. Their dad used to run restaurants in Chicago, and I've never been there.
it's fun. Chicago's, it's okay. I got to see. I was in Milwaukee, and I got to see Springsteen in Chicago at Wrigley Field, which was so much fun. Yeah,
So many boxes checked right there. Wrigley, Springsteen, like, oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
God. Yeah. That's, yeah, no, that's, I got it. Everyone I've ever met from Chicago, I've instantly liked. So I know I'm going to like Chicago. I just,
Chicago. I was in Chicago's like everyone in the Midwest that's like creative, they end up in Chicago.
right.
It's a lot of creative people, a lot of great music there. Food's fantastic. I
Mhm.
think outside of New York City, which I'm partial to, I think Chicago's probably it. Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah. I personally think it's better than San Francisco or LA. Yeah.
Wow.
'Cause there's so much there, a lot of diversity, and they also, if you like avant-garde dining, which I'm not crazy about, but there's a place for it, I think.
Yeah.
It's done better there than anywhere else. Alinea is, a great restaurant, and Grant has 3 or 4 restaurants, and they're all fantastic. But there's a lot going on there. Yeah, I like it a lot.
And but you can also go get, go down by there and get some garden air and like, like a hot, what do you call it? A hot beef sandwich? What's it
Yeah,
called?
yeah.
A hot beef.
You get to visit like the places where the bear is shot, so that's cool too.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I like the I mean, not the Bruins, the Blackhawks too. So, I mean, yeah,
Okay.
that's good
Bruins
sports.
are
Bruins, Boston, but
awesome.
I went to college in Boston. I also like the Bruins, which is very strange because I'm a
I
Rangers
do
fan.
too. Growing up, I always liked the Bruins.
Yeah.
Uh,
What is that all about?
well, my brothers liked the Rangers, and so I had to be opposite. And they were Giants fans, so I was a Redskins fan.
I was a
They
Redskins fan
they
too.
liked the Knicks, so I liked the Lakers.
Oh,
But
really?
Lakers. When I say Lakers, it was Jerry,
Magic.
Gail Goodrich. No, free that. Jerry West, Gail Goodrich, Happy Hairston, Bob McAdoo, Will Chamberlain.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great. Yeah. Did you stay like
Happy
through
Hairston,
Magic and everybody?
Elton Baylor. Yeah. I stayed a Laker fan. I like the Lakers.
And not the Knicks? And you still like the Redskins and not the Giants?
I don't care anymore.
Not the Redskins
I don't
anymore,
watch
but
football. Yeah, I
I
don't want.
I did the same thing. My dad liked the Giants, my sisters liked the Jets. And so I was like, I don't know who the Redskins are, but I like them. And so I was like, I put a Dexter Manley poster on my wall. I was probably 11. And I was like, that's my team. And everyone was like, why? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But then
I
of
like
course,
when like
migrated.
Larry Brown was playing and linebacker Chris Hamburger and people like that. Redskins were good back then.
Hmm.
And but no, I had a bit of a gambling habit when I was young. And when I finally stopped, I went cold turkey, like I did smoking cigarettes. And
Hmm.
I ended up that season, I kept a running tab with my bookie, and I ended up winning, which is hard to do. You have to win like 70% of your bets because of the VIG. So it's hard to actually put a winning season together. And I was like, you know what? Keep the money. I never bet again. And I stopped caring about football.
Wow.
I just don't
Holy.
care about
Wow.
it.
That's
I
well,
mean,
that's quite the story though.
I watched the playoffs and the Super Bowl, but that's about it. And the only sports I really watch, I watch college basketball.
Yeah. Well, I went down the fantasy football rabbit hole and when I was pregnant with my son, I won that year. So we did the draft on paper in person back then. Yeah.
Yeah, I watch college basketball, a lot of it.
Mm. Yeah.
and high school ball too, but that's about it. Boxing a little bit. I used to spend more time with it, but not anymore.
Mm.
That's about it. And not baseball. I'll watch the playoffs. That's
Mm-hmm.
it.
Oh.
Um, and football, basketball, but yeah, it's it. I don't watch a lot of pro basketball.
If we could get Shohei's pay to feed hungry people in this country, imagine that. Like he's making so much money. It actually boggles the mind, like how much Shohei's gonna be making. It's like where what how is this discrepancy? I don't know. I could go
Mm,
off all day on it. But
mm,
the owners are getting rich. It doesn't matter. It's not whatever.
this is true.
Yeah.
They are.
Um. Well, again,
Pleasure talking to you.
well,
This is
it's so great talking to you, and I appreciate again everything about you, but I really appreciate most of all that you're using, your platform to be such a powerful advocate. And I know you're going to revisit this too, as you said.
yeah, yeah. I just need an organization. I'm gonna spend time there. I just gotta get my act together.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're busy doing lots of things.
Oh, COVID made me a homebody. I don't like living. I don't like leave my home.
I'm the same way.
Really don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to travel. I had to go to LA for the Emmys and they hated it. I didn't want to be there.
Your red
Uh,
jacket was nice though.
thank you. It was very funny. I ordered that. So, Asia was the Italian designer, made it for me. And I ordered it in blue. I went to their showroom and I had picked out a blue one, but it was double breasted. So I didn't want to double breast it. They sent my measurements to Italy. They had it made, and I got there on Friday. I'm traveling Saturday morning. I got there on Friday. I opened the suit bag. I was like, "Oh my God, this is red!" And they were like, "Yeah." It's like I thought I wore the blue one, and they were like, "Well, this is." They said, "Well, okay."
Oh my
And
God.
they were like, "We'll get you a blue tux, but we can't do like velvet." And I was like, "No, I'll take it. It's great." Take it. Like, I would never in a million years have picked out red, and I loved it. It was great.
It was great. And it certainly popped, but that's crazy. Like that's
It popped.
it
It
did.
popped. It was like, it fits so well. And
Mhm.
it just, but I had more men come up to me saying, "Oh my God, I love that jacket."
I'm
It was, it
sure.
was cool. And I could wear it every Christmas.
And Valentine's Day.
Well, Valentine's Day is my wife's birthday, so we don't go out, we stay home.
Yeah.
But I can do that too. But
You
Christmas,
you could you
uh,
could really like never mind. My mind went where my mind goes and just wear the red coat, but my mind
yeah,
goes where my mind
yeah,
goes
I can,
anyway.
yeah, I can, I think I could rock it on, with a pair of jeans in the winter. It'd be fine. Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah, I like it. No, it was fun. It was fun to do. No, the Emmys were fun this year. It was really crazy where we were sitting. And I was like in eighth row, whatever, on the right. And so I'm seeing all the bear people are in front of us. They win, right?
Mhm.
Right in front of them was Secession. They all won. John Oliver was sitting next to me. He won too. We lost. We lost. It's like, this is great. Everybody around us is winning and celebrating. Like, come on.
It's our turn. We're due. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
no.
Anyway,
Well, oh my God, you have to sit next to John Oliver. I could pick your brain about that all day by
he's
itself.
the guy. I've known him for a while. He's a good guy. He's fun. Yeah.
Oh, so you might know. A friend of mine, Pete Dominic. He calls himself his
I know
fluff.
who he is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. Yeah, I know who he is. I met him somewhere, but yeah, good guy. Yeah,
You want Oliver's fluffers.
yeah.
That's a fun job.
John, I knew them all when they were on the Daily Show.
Oh,
Um,
best.
yeah. My wife was actually on the Daily Show.
Shut
After
up.
a
No
friend.
way.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, so cool.
yeah.
Who was the
Um,
host when she was on? Was
Jon
it?
Stewart.
Oh,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
a Jersey boy, isn't
He is.
he? Yeah.
He is.
Yeah.
He used to live in the city when he had a show, but he moved
He's got a
he's down
farm.
south. He has a farm, yeah. And he takes in strays. He's an animal lover. His set, when you go to his set, there are all dogs there. Everyone's allowed to bring their dogs. There are dogs running all over the place.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
He and
Uh,
his wife, I think they rescue animals. Yeah.
See, and just like John, you are one of those people who's not ladder pulling. You're not pull, you know what I mean? You're paying it forward. And like so many people who make it through hard work and their own obviously toiling, but like so many people just pull the ladder up and you don't, and John doesn't. And I think that's something people should lift up all the time.
Well, it's kind of something that my parents did, and they didn't have, we didn't come from money. My dad was a corrections officer in the county jail, and but he gave back whoever he could and thought it was important. So it's something we all try to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And as the daughter of an immigrant who tried to pay it forward as much as he could, working for the government, the Department of Defense, I that's built into me too. So if ever I'm in a position in this life to
Father
do
was a
that.
child. My father was a child of immigrants. My great grandfather came here. No, my grandfather came here in 1903, and I only know all this because I was on a episode of Finding Your Roots,
Oh.
and uh, he came here in 1903 when he was 3 years old. My grandfather, and his father brought him here. His mother stayed in Italy. His father brought him here, and then there was a record of my great grandfather going back and forth 5 times, and they figured out. So my father's family comes from a town called Vallata, and they went to the town. They wanted me to go with them, and I couldn't go. But they went to this town, and they're looking around, and they looked up on this building. They're just walking by, and it's a small little town. They looked up and saw FS, which was his initials, FC, which is his initials, and a date, which was around the time he was going back and forth. And they knocked on the door. And when they knocked on the door and the door opened, there were two photos that they saw that were photos that were in that they were my grandmother's house. And they saw them from pictures, and they said, "Is this a Colicchio family?" They said, "Yes." So they found them. So they figured out what he was doing. He was going back and forth, taking money back and forth to build a house. And
Um,
then in 1923, he brought his wife here, and they stayed here permanently. So my grandfather, from the age of 3, was pretty much on his own here. He stayed with family, and then met the woman who he married, who's my grandmother, here. But they also came from the same town.
I've heard
Italy and
the
God, yeah. But they all
right.
they all they all were in Elizabeth. All the Balladees were in Elizabeth, and so my father, I mean, grew up dirt poor. Um,
Mm,
he was one of five, and um, my grandfather worked in the factory, worked at Singer factory
mm, mm.
functions, and so yeah, so it's one generation removed of being from immigrants. So
Yeah. I think anyway, I just appreciate the idea of paying it forward and helping the people who are coming up behind you. I think we need more people out there like that.
yeah.
Yeah. I think I think we can move this country in the right direction with a little bit more of that. And I think we're gonna get
So so
there. I'm such an optimist. I really am. But
yeah, I am too. I think we're gonna be okay. We'll see. We'll keep working.
yeah,
And
we'll
I'm
see.
excited about that. I'm excited about that. We keep talking. I'm excited about the bench that we have coming up.
What about what?
I'm excited about the bench that we have coming up, the sort of, next few years between Gavin Newsom
Oh,
and uh Michigan, Whitmer,
Whitman's
and
amazing.
Whitman, yes, I'm sorry, and Russ, not Russ, Westmore,
Mm-hmm.
Governor of Maryland,
Maryland, yeah.
fantastic. Um,
Even
there's
Katie
there's
Porter.
Katie Porter, Pete Buttigieg. There's a bunch of young people who are gonna be there. I think
I
we're gonna be
agree.
strong next 20 years.
I feel the same exact way, and I feel like Biden is the bridge, that Biden Harris is the bridge between sort of the old guard, the old school, and the future. And I think the young generations obviously should be they should be
And
taking up.
Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania,
Oh,
is
he's
fantastic.
amazing. What he did when that bridge collapsed and they brought in the Indianapolis 500 like air dryer thing, like built
No
that thing.
time.
Nothing.
Yep,
They
yep,
needed that in Buffalo for that football game. But yeah, no, he's amazing. The Gavin Newsom is amazing. I mean,
yep.
there's tons and tons of talent, and I think with the and I know we're away over here, but like with Nancy Pelosi and people like her who are trusted leaders who know what to do, kind of being the shepherds and can bring us all into the future, I think we'll be set up for a longevity of
I
success.
gotta say, I spent a lot of time with Nancy. She's fantastic. She did something. Everybody's like, "Oh, she's crooked." She this. So I was in her office one day, and she agreed to do a fundraiser for Food Policy Action in San Francisco. So she agreed to do it. Now I was there in her office talking about something else. And towards the end, I said, do you want to talk about the event in San Francisco? She goes, I can't talk about that. So what do you mean? She goes, in my office, I can't talk about that.
Hmm?
We can go outside this building and I can talk about it. In my office, that is not official work. I can't talk about that. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, I said, and I was like, who would know? She said, I would.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
That's
I know what she's about.
yeah.
She's great.
She
Yeah.
the goat, the best ever. I'm very lucky to have met her for one
Yeah.
brief second, and I was in awe. She's the best ever, and that's the way you do it. You know, you're supposed to keep those things separate. Believe it or not, you're not
Yeah,
supposed
no,
to have.
it needs there's the way that things are done, and there's ethics, regarding stuff, and I can't talk about that.
Yeah, I love it. And instead, we have now somebody who says he should have total and complete immunity from all things, always. Like, why do
That's
32
that's such
people
that's
say?
such an argument. It's crazy.
Yeah,
It's
we've come
crazy.
all the way to I can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. We've come
You
all
know,
the way.
so years ago, I was at my first Super Bowl. It was in Minneapolis. It was freezing out. The Redskins were playing Buffalo. Redskins won, by the way. Um, I'm walking into the Super Bowl and Trump is in front of me.
Mhm.
He was getting booed. People were just like, F you. Like this is when he was going through the divorce and he was in the tabloids. I mean,
Yeah.
people it's like it was just I was like, wow, people really hate this guy. Like, we need more of that.
Right.
Yeah. It was wild. Yeah.
But
Uh,
like growing up here, I mean, I think we always knew here he was
yeah,
kind of a
sure.
con artist.
Listen, I know a lot of the big real estate families in New York, and they think it's a joke. They
Yeah.
don't think it's a joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right,
Yeah.
we can go on and on.
Well,
It's
yeah, I kept
basketball
you
day.
so long. Thank you again, and like
Sure.
really honestly, thank you for your advocacy and thank you for everything that you do and just keeping it real and and being, who you are and doing what you do and I'm a huge, huge, huge fan.
Jersey Strong.
Jersey strong. I mean, we're gonna bring it home in 24,
All
along
right.
with
Take
Wisconsin
care.
and everything else. All right, bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.